Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Just before we get started, a quick reminder, please silence your cell phones. And I also wanted to thank Needler Faucher for providing the vignette on the stage today. We are here to witness this conversation between Nicole Hollis and Joseph Becker. It's a celebration of the launch of her new monograph, her second one, called The Artistry of Home. Let me tell you a little bit about Nicole and about Joseph, and then we'll get started. So Nicole Hollis is the creative director and principal of Nicole Hollis. It's an award-winning collective of designers that conceives timeless interiors that elevate the human spirit. Curating pared-down spaces with great attention to their content and purpose reflects the studio's design philosophy. They offer a holistic approach to the art of living through residential hospitality and product design. Nicole has a belief in the meritocracy of good ideas and a desire to channel the spirit of collaboration both within the firm and when working with clients, architects, and artisans. Her work has been featured in Architectural Digest, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, GQ, Elle Decor, just to name a few. And the firm has received numerous prestigious awards, including the Elle Decor A-List, First Dibs 50, HG Gold Key Awards, Interior Design Magazine's Best of Year Awards, the 2023 ASID Designer of the Year Award, the 2024 Hospitality Designer of the Year, and has been named to Architectural Digest's AD 100. So we're pleased to have you here today. And Joseph Becker is actually the Associate Curator of Architecture and Design at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, where his recent exhibitions include The Art of Noise, Marshall Brown Projects, DeKeandre's Civic Academy, Barbara Stofacher Solomon, Strips of Stripes, and Tubba Auerbach, SVZ. His recent publications include Tubba Auerbach, SVZ, The Sea Ranch Architecture, Environment, and Idealism, and contributions to Levis Wood's Exquisite Experiments, Early Years, and Recurrent Visions, The Architecture of Marshall Brown Projects. So without further ado, thank you both for joining us and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. This is a great crowd, so thank you for coming this morning, and I am super thrilled to be able to share the stage here with Nicole and to chat a bit about her work and her practice and the artists that she works with and the things that we all share in common, our shared interest and love for design. So we're also gathering, kind of on the occasion of this incredible publication that you've just put out. And I thought that we might maybe start, before we start talking about your work, to talk about where some of your initial inspirations have come from and a bit of how you found yourself as such a prolific interior designer. So please take us a little bit on a journey.
Well, thank you for having me here today. It's a great turnout. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Appreciate it. A little bit about my background. So I was talking to Joseph about some inspiration and what inspired me to be a designer. And I think, I always was attracted to, I don't know, maybe growing up in nature. So nature surrounded, as in my early 20s, visiting Europe, seeing Carlos Scarpa's work really inspired me in my design. So coming into interior design, I think I always approached interior design architecturally. I worked for architecture firms throughout my career before starting my firm. I sort of set my firm up as like an architecture firm in style, so that I think architecture has always been an influence. You can't have a great interior without a great building. So also, Brancusi was a big influence for me. Visiting Paris as a student, seeing Brancusi's work firsthand was just the materiality, the sculptural, quality of the work, the plaster, the wood, bronze really carries through even today in my work. And that brings me to Noguchi as well. So seeing stone, the way he would carve wood or stone, and it just felt so pared down and reduced. to its sculptural form. So I think in our studio, we're always asking us, what could we remove? How can we pare this back? Almost like Coco Chanel would say, like, look in the mirror and then remove some accessories. So we would always say, okay, let's reduce. So I think that's a big influence in my work. Fashion is also an influence. When I'm looking for inspiration, hi, John. Visiting museums, seeing fashion shows, working in fashion in New York in my early career. I went to FIT, which influenced, I had a lot of fashion students I worked with. I worked in the textile, in the basement of the school, there's a textile loom, so I worked with textiles very closely, which also influenced a lot of my work, just having the subtlety and materiality mixed in. So yeah, just fashion, even today, I look at fashion when I'm looking for inspiration.
It's so clear that you take these different details, these different moments of inspiration, and put them all together. In the spaces that you create, you can see that there's a respect for the materiality in that way. And I just love seeing Brancusi in his studio, which is also this exquisite space. Like, the work of art is the space of creating the art as well. And this is something that we hadn't talked about before, but the interior design is kind of all around us. So if you're focused on the details from fashion to furniture to architecture, through the lens of what does the wood feel like, the bronze feel like, the glass feel like, you create something that feels exquisite and very thought through.
Yeah, I think bringing all those elements together in a meaningful way, and I always think they activate each other. So the bronze tension against the softness of the wood or plaster is interesting to me as a materiality and a form. So I think less about decoration and more about form and sort of reflection of light, bringing those elements into our design, creating those empty spaces where that could hold the light or reflect the light is really important to us. The image that you're seeing now is Sugimoto, and I think, looking at nature for inspiration has always been a big aspect of mine, and I think most people are inspired by nature. It's just awe-inspiring. But looking at a photo like this, the subtlety and the space and the calm is something we're always trying to create in our environments.
Yeah, I love thinking about this image also in relationship to the Scarpa image, because both are framing our world in a very interesting way. And Scarpa was an architect who thought through all scales all at once. So, and I think that as an interior designer, you're really focused on the actual nuances of our everyday. It's the things that we actually touch in the spaces that we move through domestically and intimately. So I love that kind of bookending these slides of inspiration as well.
Yeah, I think so, and I think thinking about those elements as Scarpa did as timeless, and those materials as being better over time and weathering over time. So applying that to our work and thinking, is this going to hold the test of time, or is it going to look really dated? So I think it's also important to think about, and reflect back to some of these masters.
Yeah, and I think that that's very clear in the way that you build relationships with artists, because you form very long-term relationships with some of the artists over your practice, which is 22 years, going on 22 years. These artists that you often work with, it's years of cultivation, of trust building, and kind of steering them towards creating something really special. So I was hoping that maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the artists that you've worked with and how those relationships have evolved.
Yeah, if I think about it, we, the approach of the book was to show a little bit about maybe the inside track or the behind the scenes of the work. It didn't quite work out that way. Rizzoli really just wanted beautiful photos of interiors, but we really wanted to share the relationships that we have developed over the years with artists. And for me, I think I just find an artist that I fall in love with and really try and find ways to work with them and bring them into our projects. And I think a lot of us have grown together. Our work has evolved. We have evolved. Our friendships have deepened. It becomes more secondhand as we work together. We already know what to do or how to push each other. So I think bringing those into our projects and sharing that in the latest book, The Artistry of Home, was just kind of emphasizing some of those relationships, bringing those artists and celebrating those artists in the book was hopefully what we can accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine who the next Noguchi or Brancusi or
Yes.
Scarpa would be, but you invest in that way with the belief that each of these artists, and you're seeing in the table of contents on the book, some of the artists that Nicole works with, that they have this potential to really contribute to a larger cultural sphere. We share, I think, a little bit of a mode of operating in that sense, that we each work with designers. You're an interior designer, I'm a curator, and our role is to help tease something out of these individuals or these studios and to try to give them the runway, but also make sure they don't, go off it. So maybe I want to hear about your relationships with some of these folks as we flip through some of these pages and
Absolutely.
and how you maintain that.
Yeah, I think staying on the runway is the biggest part of our jobs, but and I think that's about right. Like, we should be orchestrating the orchestra and not, playing the instrument. I'm not the fine artist, but I do approach the fine artist with a little bit of a hands-off approach, but guidelines, bumpers. So with David Wiseman, as I said, we've evolved together over many years working together. His practice evolved. He's a bigger, well-known artist now. When he first started, he was a little less so. And I think we've challenged each other with bigger and more complex projects. And so this one that we first developed together over many, many years, it took us, I think we started this project 7 years in the making, and I think we brought David on in year 2. So 5 years we were working on this project, bringing this custom powder room together with David and bringing in some themes that he draws from nature. He kind of lives in this fantastical world in his mind, and then he puts them on paper. And so bringing that from paper into the bronze or ceramic enamel work. Here's David and I on an install. The image on the right is a progress photo of some mushroom caps he created in ceramic and enamel. So he's experimenting with new finishes and materials to bring this fantastical world to life. And I think, pushing each other, we came to him and said, we love this. He had a little snake on his desk, and we're like, what is that? And our client was like, I want that serpent. And so we pushed him, there she is, working with him on creating this screen in this powder room for these sort of draping snakes kind of going through the screen work. This was a new kind of way to work for David. He started using technology in 3D imaging and printing, which he had never done before. So 2 years in the making to make that screen. I would say maybe a week before the screen was supposed to install, there was a panic, like, you need to fly to LA right now. David's freaking out, he just was like not feeling it. And that was in the evening. The next morning I arrived in LA. He's like, I worked it out, it's fine, I'm good. So we're both like, okay. So the screen came together beautifully. But I think, you should have those moments of panic. I think we're doing things that haven't been done before together, to have the trust and sort of the trust from the client to say, I believe in you. It's, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work, but I'm willing to take the risk and put the investment in. I mean, this powder room was a huge investment. It was many, many artisans. We have the stonework, all custom, pink onyx. We have the bronze faucets by another artist, and then we have David's mirror and screen and light fixture. He even wanted to do the toilet flusher and the toilet paper holder. He couldn't stop himself, so it was fine. But there's like a little frog on the toilet paper holder. having a poo. So, you know, we give him the creative freedom. So I think, you know, as you said, it's our job to say, okay, you have a deadline, and we do have an agreed upon budget. And so making sure that they stay within that deadline and budget. And yes, there was a panic. I'm not going to make the deadline. I'm not, you know, there's always that panic at the end. But it all came out beautifully, and I think we're very proud of it. But I do have to say, the client's son, who's, you know, a young 7-8-year-old, she said he spends an enormous amount of time just in that room, brings his books, and just like parks his books in there and reads in there. Like, he just loves the space so much.
I'm fortunate to have been able to spend time in this room as well. And I have to say, I think it is one of the most exquisite rooms in San Francisco. It is so incredibly thought through. And when you close the door, you are in this kind of Alice in Wonderland moment. And, you know, trust on both sides, or on all three sides of this kind of triangle between the artist, designer, the interior designer, and the client. And for David to feel the trust with you, that you would hop on a flight and be there to kind of help him with his therapeutic moment.
Yes.
Where we were talking about our little therapy puff right here. And then for the clients to say, we are on board for whatever kind of whimsical journey this might be.
Yeah.
And to say we can have this exquisite toilet flusher and toilet paper holder is pretty amazing. And you can see that even these images are incredibly luscious, so you can imagine what it feels like actually to be there in person. That relationship between you as a conduit between a client and a designer, I think, is really important. That the client has trust in you to help them realize a vision, and incorporated in that is the idea of patronage. And I think that that's another really important topic for us to talk about, because these clients that you have are all focused on the benefits of art and design, but through you, they help elevate the work of the artists that you work with as well. And again, that's another overlap that we share. And I want to know from you, you know, how do you help clients find that voice of patronage?
I think, you know, through the work that we've been doing, they also find us. You know, I think they come to me and already have maybe a understanding of the art world or fine art world, or want to know more. So that helps. But there are some clients that may not have, you know, are budding art collectors or want to learn more. So I think there's always the learning process. So explaining to them, showing them imagery, giving them ideas of artists and what the artists can do. And I'm really interested in living artists. I'm really interested in maybe up-and-coming artists as well, and giving them an opportunity to get involved in our projects. So I think bringing the client along the journey, and sort of, if they're available, to have a studio visit, meet the artist, understand how their work is, understand the process. That also helps them understand the cost, because it's not accessible, this kind of work.
Yeah.
It really does help them understand the labor, the focus, it shows the whole breadth of the studio that goes into creating these beautiful works of art. So then we get into custom work and having the artist spend so much time just focused on their project. So if I can bring them along on the journey, I think that really helps them understand the value, and sometimes maybe they don't have the wherewithal or they don't have the time. So it's up to me to sort of broker between the artist and the client and help them understand that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much more than just fittings and furnishings, because
Yes.
you really are creating something special in many cases, something unique, something that is an exquisite work of art that will exist in its own in perpetuity. And so that kind of commitment is really important to cultivate and to help people find that focus, that it's worth their investment, that
Yes.
they're creating something that is not just for their own intimate powder room, but that then will inspire others potentially.
Yeah, I hope so. And you know, when you're working in residential, it doesn't always get seen by everyone, but I think it is seen by more people than you know. And I think for this particular project, this client, you know, wanted to work with David. She didn't quite know what we were going to do together, but wanted to meet with him. Once they met, they had a couple of things in common. They had, she had been to the school where he studied at Rhode Island School of Design. She had visited there. They knew some of the same people. They hit it off. She started talking about her upbringing in the Netherlands, talking about the flora, the fauna, what inspired her, and that inspired the screen that we developed. Olsen Kundig worked with us to figure out sort of how to make the screen function, the sliding and the bifolding. So it took a team of us kind of to do the engineering side, while David in our studio worked on the creative side. And this is the first double-sided screen he's ever done, where it's three-dimensional on both sides. And he's, you know, he worked very hard, years in the making, to create the artwork, create the samples, get the fabrication together. So, you know, this took probably 5 years of planning.
And very intimate, because it is tied into that client's
Yes.
history and personal story.
And for her small children to go to the screen and have a sense of storytelling and discovery. Every time you look at it, there's a little a creature, a little animal that is in there that you don't see right away.
Yeah, I love that about David's work, that there are just worlds and worlds and worlds. And,
Yes.
it's amazing when you find an artist who's willing to invest so much. And so that relationship is hugely important. Your support of him, their support of both of you,
Yes,
and your vision that you bring to the client. I know you have a few other artists in the slideshow that we can look at, but I think pointing to that idea that the book itself is a way for the vast majority of people to access these intimate spaces, and so the importance of that as a format as well. So we're really happy
I feel
to
fortunate that we were allowed to publish some of these projects, to share the work that we had done and spent many, many years cultivating these relationships with artists and custom fabrication of these pieces. So yeah, it feels great to be able to share it with the world.
Cool. So you have another artist here whose work also transforms spaces, and I was thinking maybe you could talk more about Ingrid's work too.
Yeah, so Ingrid, I don't know, I feel like when I first saw her work, it did remind me of sort of the, you know, Giacometti work and Brancusi a little bit. And then meeting Ingrid, even though my French is not great and her English is not great, but we spoke the common language of wearing all black and our love of leather. We really hit it off, and we really enjoy each other's work. And she is a prolifically talented woman, and I think the story of Giacometti himself telling her that she should do art and make art. When she's just a stay-at-home mom, she would only make things for her home, for her interiors at her house, and he encouraged her to really work in fine art. And so she started making decorative furniture and sculpture, and then taking the sculpture and bringing it into the decorative arts. And so it's such stunning work, and she's such a perfectionist and really, really, really deeply cares. And these are some process photos. So I asked Ingrid if she would do the entire dining room of a client's home who is an art collector, and what better way to celebrate an artist by giving them the freedom to work on an entire space. So not every piece in this room is by Ingrid, but all the walls, the crown molding, the base are in bronze, the lights are in bronze, the walls are carved wood, and then the bronze fireplace, as well as the dining table itself with Ingrid's work. We were just in Ingrid's studio last week in Paris, and she just has such a rigor to her work, and so you just don't mess with that. So you just tell her, this is the room and this is the capacity. All this work was done during COVID, so it was between her studio and our studio, French and English translation, thousands and pages of shop drawings and coordination and Zoom calls, but it all came together so beautifully. and it really
Yeah.
complements the art collection as well.
I kind of want to draw the line between David's work and Ingrid's work.
Yeah.
Because David creates pieces that are so maximalist in a way, and they become these centerpieces with these stories and the worlds, as we were talking about. And Ingrid creates these fields of texture that almost play very well with everything else that's happening in a room. So that dynamic as an interior designer is really important, because you have other things that are commanding attention in a space, but you want to be able to showcase artistry and texture and materiality in a really fine way. And I think that what you found with Ingrid's work is exquisite in that regard.
Agreed. I think, and it's kind of like, if you look at the book, all of our projects are so varied and different, and it kind of shows that I don't really play favorites. I really just love it all, and I love David's work, but you can't compete with David's work. You have to put it front and center.
Yep.
It is so maximalist and Baroque almost. And then you get to Ingrid, and it has a quiet subtlety to it and a sophistication, which I can relate to. I think if I had to choose, I'd probably have more Ingrid than David in my house. Don't tell David. But, you know, I think I love them both equally. And I think bringing that to the client and saying, which way do you lean, is interesting to see which way they choose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this room, I think it's great because you basically said, you know, here's the whole room, right? So when you give over in that way, you know, what is that dynamic
And if
like?
someone's like, well then, so you're not doing the work? Like you gave your work to someone else? I mean, it's a lot of work to coordinate all of this between the builders and the shop in Paris. But yeah, I think it's such a celebration of the artist. I feel like, for me, the true word of collaboration is to give someone the space to create something new and not have to put my mark on it, per se. I think for me, it's like, here's the space we've designed, we have the parameters, here's the confines of the budget and the time, and then we kind of bounce ideas off each other and work together, but I do try and let the artist be the artist and not tell them what to do.
Right, I mean, I can imagine, for instance, thinking about a lightness in the room, even though there is a lot of weight in the room, but that the walls, instead of being dark, are relatively light within her language.
Yeah.
And so I can kind of start to put together what that dynamic is between you and Ingrid, and kind of how you might have helped shape what the outcome is, in very much in a curatorial way as well.
Yeah, I think curatorial, it's because we knew there would be works of art. There's a Kusama, there's the red Donald Judd, the Jenny Holzer bench. So having the room hold the weight with the art collection itself and not compete, all had to really work. It could have gone really wrong. So I think just keeping that in mind, that there will be you see the herring on the other wall. So having this room quieter, really featuring the artists themselves, you know, that the client has in their collection, but also the room is a work of art. And I think that goes back to, you know, Scarpa creating entire environments. He's so detailed, he'd do the candle holders. So Ingrid even did the candle holders here. So I think it's just getting into every element. And the client comes in and says, this feels like her chapel, you know, a really quiet, beautiful space to contemplate. So I think it's successful.
What role did you play in the placement and selection of the artwork?
No role at all. Just knowing that we didn't know what pieces would go. Client didn't know.
Wow.
Art consultant didn't know. We just kind of thought, we'll see what works well. And so it was just a kind of wait and see.
So essentially, the room came first.
Yes.
In that way.
Yes.
I mean, in many
and
instances.
then the collection sort of fit into it.
Is that always how things work, or are there times where you're designing a room around a specific work of art?
I think we're always trying to think of art as well as furniture and the interiors. It sort of one informs the other. If a client already has an art collection that we can pull from and say, we're really going to feature this work of art in the dining room, we're going to work the interiors around it. But if you're really creating a successful room, you could switch out the art easily, and the room will still hold together.
Yeah, very different from a white box.
Yes, yeah.
That
You
I'm
still have to live in it.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking about kind of living in it, you know, one thing that we had chatted about earlier today was this idea of how we actually live.
Yes.
When you look at this beautiful publication, you see these exquisite rooms, this preciousness is present, but that's often not how our daily lives are orchestrated. So I just wanted to hear a little bit from you how you create spaces that can respond to the potential chaos of our everyday as well.
Yeah, no lunch boxes left on the Ingrid Donat dining table. No. No, I think these are all family homes that we're showing here, and I think these families choose to live with art, and I think it's great that children grow up in an environment with art. I think that's important to expose them early. But also, when we approach the interiors and the furnishings, there is, real sensitivity around durability,
Yep.
Surfaces, what's going to land on the surface, planning, organizations, storage. Everything has its place so that they can enjoy this beautiful design and not walk around and throw their coats on benches, or we try and plan it all out so that it has a place to go.
There's a lot of utility
Yeah,
in these designs.
you kind of need to think that through, or else it does sort of spill over. Your life will, and that's okay. I don't want people to feel like they live in a museum. I think they should enjoy, and a lot of these materials are very durable. The stone, the bronze we talked about, practically indestructible, and some of the furniture pieces we put outdoor fabric on, just to know that the kids can sit on a great, beautiful sofa, and it's can be bleached if needed. So I think, the practicality is always in the back of our minds.
Yeah, it must be. And that idea of practicality, I think, is really present actually in Michael's work, too. There is a real refinement and utility in his work. And even though you're not hanging things on his light fixtures like coats and stuff, but I think that there is a real responsiveness to the reality of our everyday.
Oh, wait, yeah, these pictures. This is just a few days ago in Paris. David and I are working on a design together. I'm sitting on the floor drawing, but he has a rigor to his work that I admire. I think that the minimal, he and I were chatting over dinner, and I was telling him when I think it was 98, I was in New York at Murray Moss's store, and that was my church, to go to Murray's store and see, it was set up like a museum and curated beautifully, and I saw this mobile light fixture, and I thought, I had never seen anything like that in my life, and I was obsessed. And ever since then, I was a fan of Michael's and wanted to work with him. So over the years, we met, I introduced myself, I started asking, for commission work, and we just really became good friends. And Michael is particular. He is a tough, very focused person. He's an industrial designer, and he is very minimal but very technical, but also so romantic at the same time. He's from Greece and from the islands, and if you even look at his Instagram, it's always reflections of light or beautiful seascapes. So we had a lot of the same inspiration, and so I think we had a lot in common. Going to his apartment in London years ago, I walk in, and there's nothing in there. It's just empty, and this beautiful collection of stone pebbles on the floor. They look like that big, and they're smooth, beautiful. And he said they're just smooth from the river, just running through the river, for years, that they became these gorgeous polished stones, and he just had those. And then he's standing in his kitchen with this beautiful coffee grinder, brass, just grinding, and I'm like, where's your stuff? I just start opening cabinet. I'm like, where's your stuff? There's no stuff in here. And, and I open a door, and his partner, Polly's there. He's a painter, and he's like, hi, and then, there's all the books, and
Hidden
Polly
away.
and the books are stuffed behind the door. And, he practices yoga. It's like being, in a very Zen space. But, and we just, over the years, hit it off. And so having the opportunity to commission works by Michael in spaces like this Snowhead house that we completed in Atherton, and responding to the scale of the space, the curves of the building, how do we, as a team in our studio, we were like, how are we going to light this table, first of all, because the ceiling's so high. So working with Michael, this is a one-of-a-kind sketch that he did for us of this mobile, and it just was beautiful. So I think, it's working over the years and just being able to call him up and say, I have a problem, can you help me? And let's come up with something beautiful together.
I think it's really incredible how you definitely move between these different ends of the spectrum, right? So the world of little mushrooms and frogs and snakes and incredible brass hand-worked details, and then the ultra-refined, ultra-minimal, very open and contemplative moments that come through Michael's work. Very airy and, referencing obviously the Bauhaus movements and the reactions against ornament. You are able to straddle both of these worlds really well.
It is really interesting. People they look at my book and go, wow, these are so varied, these projects. And I said, well, they're all in response to the client themselves, the site, the architect, there's so much to, like this project that you're seeing now is responding to the landscape outside, but also the client's desires, and the architecture is very rigorous. So yeah, being able to straddle both is fun. Why limit yourself? I don't know. I don't feel I want to limit myself. But I also really love the collaboration. I love to have these look around the room and see all my friends there, to see Michael, to see David, to see Ingrid. I think that, and the dining table by Delacorte. I mean, I think just bringing these great makers together is exciting for me.
Yeah.
One thought I had before I lose it is we have a Michael Anastasiadis chandelier at home over our dining table, and it gets used for all the holiday decorations.
So things do hang on them.
So things do hang on it. I sent him a photo of bats hanging off of it upside down one year, and he's just horrified, of course. And I was like, see, and he was like, get those bats off of that right now. So yeah, it's very functional for kids as well.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I was trying to get at, I think. Is when you look at this incredible tableau that you've created, kind of for this publication, but it's almost hard to imagine, how it gets messy when it really does get messy in our homes.
No, it doesn't get messy, Joseph. No.
The bats come
The
out.
bats,
But that's so important because we live in these spaces, right? We want them to become our own and not just these frozen, beautiful specimens. And that's a delicate dance often.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of discussion goes into it before decisions are made. We don't just, impose or tell the client, this is it, this is what we're doing, and you have to live with it. I think it's considerations are made, where we're gonna put the works. If you notice, a lot of the most delicate works that we have in our projects are high up, the chandelier or the skylight, or, things that are very keep little gooey hands off of are usually higher up. But the tactile pieces are low. We want you to be able to interact and to really connect with that. And I think it's great for kids.
Yeah.
And adults.
When you're thinking about bringing a client towards an end result, I mean, we talked a little bit at the beginning about some of your inspirations, but how are you helping inspire them or helping them find their voice as well? Are they looking at some of your past projects, or are they looking to you to kind of dissect their design personas?
Yeah, sometimes they don't know what they're looking for, and I think it's a discovery together. I think we have to get to know each other. I think a lot of listening is involved, and then I will push a little, hey, would you like to try this? Or, what do you think? Oh, no, not for me. Oh, yes, I think I would like that. Would you like to meet the artist? Yes, I'd like to meet the, Haas Brothers is a very particular, look, aesthetic. So I think it's a little bit of flashcards as well, what do you think of this artist, or this artist, or this artist? But I think just challenging them. I have one client who's a huge collector, and she said, I really like the way that you are always trying to bring artistry and craftsmen into the spaces, and not just buy a painting. I really want to bring in sort of the craft work itself. Yep. And so I'll just keep experimenting, I guess, and testing and bringing them along. They may not know what they want until they visually see it. So I think there's a lot of the eye traveling and really maybe going to a fair together or going to an art show together or a museum or visiting an artist space. And then we can really start understanding, you know what, I don't like that. And that's great to know because then we can go a different direction. So it really is a discovery, and it's great to do it together.
Yeah, that idea of relationship building is so key.
Yeah.
And some of these projects take many years. There's real
years.
investment. Takes a long time to develop some of the work, to develop those relationships, to install it, for the whole thing to come to fruition.
Like, can we go back one slide, if that's possible? The sink here was an artist. He's in Milan, and we just said, have you ever made a sink? And he's like, no. And so he made one in brass for a client, and then he said, well, what about stone? And so he made another one in stone. And I think it was, for him, he had never tried to do anything like that. We have an artist that we visited who works in wood, and he had this beautiful vessel sitting on, he was sent to our office, and we're all looking at it, and we're like, well, what if we turned it over and made it into a light and asked him, we don't want to insult you, is that okay if we, what if you made a light fixture? And he was so excited, and now he's making so many light fixtures. So I think it's just that discovery and collaboration. You feel safe, you feel like we can try new things and see how that goes.
Yeah, you have to build that trust, though, before you ask somebody to completely venture outside their wheelhouse.
No, if they don't know me and I ask them to do, they're like, who is this? I'm like, what? I'm not going to do that.
Right.
You can insult an artist pretty easily.
Yeah.
They are fragile creatures. So there is a nuance to artist whispering.
I want to know about this. Is this a door knocker?
It's a door knocker. So you met the client of the Serpent House. This is another house, but we visited Van Cronenberg in Ghent in Belgium, and they have a warehouse full of antique hardware. And so you go in the warehouse, and they've been collecting for years, and it goes way, way, way back. They're like this Egyptian, and it's not real Egyptian, but it's motifs or medieval pieces. So we went through the warehouse and just would find antique pieces and ask them, can we use this in our projects? And they would then go and 3D print a piece, to the right scale or the right volume, or we'd say, I love this dragon, can you make it a finial of a curtain rod? And they, so we would just kind of work. So they had this in their collection, and we showed it to the client, and she wanted to have that as her front door knocker. So it was just an introduction to the home, very artistic and historical.
Incredible. I mean, that's something that's a huge part of your practice, is actually being the artist as well, in some sense.
I guess so. I think I just love the discovery and always looking and sort of looking for that collaboration or pushing or just trying to keep, I don't know, maybe a child's mind where you're just approaching things and say, what if we did this? And then everyone in the studio looks at you like, you're a crazy person, but we'll try that. I think it's like trial and error, not being afraid to try something and fail. I think it's okay.
So how do you maintain that child's mind?
It's difficult. You can get bogged down for sure. I think just surrounding yourself with other creatives is important, and then just keeping your mind up in the clouds. I think, and giving all of the heavy thinking to your partner and let him make the decisions.
That seems like a pretty good formula.
I think I think I've always been that way. I think I've always had a maker's mind, and I've always been about just, discovery and exploring and touch, what if I like this, but what if we did it this way, or just sort of experimenting and not being afraid to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Nicole, it's been such a treat to be able to hang and chat with you and bring some of your insights to this incredible crowd. So you have a little bit of a book signing.
Yes, yeah.
And I think an opportunity for some questions in there, or do you want to do questions here? I forgot if we were doing questions.
I don't know if we're doing questions. Are there any questions? No, we're not doing questions. No questions.
No questions. Questions in the other room.
Well, yeah, thanks, Joseph. I really appreciate you doing this.
Really a treat. Thank you, Nicole. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. That was amazing that you were able to share that with us. It's so inspiring to hear how you approach your work. Thank you guys for joining us. I wanted to invite you all to join Needler Faucher for a reception and a book signing. So thank you for coming.